We just built it as a tool that was useful to us because we kind of had no idea of how to build a company, how to build a product. Not neither three of us had done anything of this nature. And we initially built a tool like ChatGPT where it'd be like a Slack bot, and then we would be able to ask it a bunch of questions and it would just give you the answer. We realized that it would hallucinate a lot. It would just make up stuff and it was not trustworthy. And my co-founder had this idea that, okay, like what if you ground it in real web links? And then we tested early feedback, and then the people who used it in the beginning, they were all like, hey, look, I know that you just built it as a cool tool, but I actually find this to be better than Google.
Hi, I'm Craig Smith, and this is Eye on AI. In this episode, I talk with Aravind Srinivas, co founder and CEO of Perplexity AI. Perplexity is reshaping the search landscape with what it calls its conversational answer engine, providing direct answers grounded in real facts. The company has made a splash by claiming its goal is to supplant Google, but Arvin is realistic about the challenges. He talks about building a reliable search and ranking system to ground Perplexity's large language model in trusted information. I hope you find the conversation as fascinating as I did.
I'm Aravind Srinivas. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Perplexity. Perplexity is a conversational answer engine that directly seeks to give you an answer to any question that you have. And the way it differentiates from existing tools like Google, like search engines, is that you get the answer instead of getting a bunch of links and having to open them and read them yourself. And the way it differentiates itself from other chat tools like ChatGPT that also directly answer your question is that it's grounded in real facts and tells the user exactly where it's pulling its content and the answer from in the form of citations or references. So it's like if Wikipedia and ChatGPT had a baby and used all of the data from the internet, that product would look exactly like Perplexity, and that's what we are.
Yeah. And how did you come to this? What's your educational and career trajectory?
Yeah, so I originally come from India. I was born in India. I lived there for the first 22 years of my life. And I came to the United States in 2017. I had gotten an undergrad in electrical engineering with a lot of focus on computer science and machine learning too, from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, IIT Madras. And it's one of the top engineering colleges there in India. And during my undergrad period, I got to intern in many American universities and Canadian universities. One of them was Turing Award winners lab, Yoshua Bengio. He's one of the deep learning pioneers. And I got really excited by that, and I wanted to do a PhD combining deep learning and reinforcement learning because DeepMind was the hottest lab in town at the time, and they were ruling the roost with all their RL progress. So I really wanted to do more research there, and I got admitted to Berkeley, which is again one of the top American universities, particularly for AI. And OpenAI had a strong connection to Berkeley. They used to recruit a lot from Berkeley, so I got lucky there and got to intern at OpenAI at the end of my first year. And that was when I got to meet amazing scientists and researchers there. Folks like Ilya Sutsky were their chief scientist, and then Alec Radford, and they were building GPT-1 at the time. It wasn't called GPT-1 because it was just called GPT. Nobody knew there'll be like so many generations of it, and but it was clear it was something very different. So I really wanted to um study more about it, like try to, you know, change my topic in research from RL to generative models, generative AI. We used to call it unsupervised learning at the time. So like kind of like trying to do more of that is what we were thinking, and I got to a pretty good PhD. Like we published a lot of good papers on transformers. And the highlight of my PhD was working with people at DeepMind during my PhD. And DeepMind and now Google Brain, but now it's all the same. And during one of my internships at DeepMind in London, um, I used to be launching jobs during the day, and then I used to be in their library during the evening, because as an intern, like you just want to stay in the office as much as you can and like learn as much as possible, right? So I did that, and I stumbled upon this book called How Google Works by Eric Schmidt, and In the Plex and How Google Works. These were two different books, and I really loved the entrepreneurship conversion from research. Like, I always was excited about entrepreneurship. I watched movies like Pirates in Silicon Valley and TV shows like Silicon Valley, but never thought I was one of those people, because all the examples there, like Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or uh, Steve Jobs, were all like undergraduate dropouts. And I was here, already completed my undergrad, right? Like I could only get to the US because I completed my undergrad. And so I was like, okay, you know what? It's over. I'm only born to work for these people. I'm not born to like actually do a company myself. But then I looked at this example of Larry Page and Sergey Brin, and they were basically PhD students, completed their undergrad, and then got an idea and, while working on their PhD, and made it into a legendary company where I'm actually interning in at that point. So that really appealed to me, and I went and asked one of my mentors at Google, "Hey, like, what do you think is the page rank of 2019?" And we would talk about what is the most important idea, and everybody would just say transformers. And this was still at a time when there was GPT-2, and there were still a lot of skeptics at DeepMind. Were like, oh, what? Like, it's cool, but it's not really intelligent. It's just like, autocomplete. But again, like, look how far we've come from there. So I went and reached out to the inventor of transformers for an internship. He was at Google Brain.
Yeah, who is that you reach at Lucas or who?
This is the first author, Ashish Vaswani. Like when you look at the transformer author list, it's Ashish Vaswani. He's the first guy. He's the core contributor. I got to work with him and learned so much from him that, like, super grateful. He's also an investor in Perplexity. Yeah, so we worked on making transformers like a universal computation system, not just for natural language, but also for computer vision, for RL. And I was very inspired by his way of thinking about how like transformers are like, one universal architecture for everything. And that got me into like, either I was deciding between, at the end of my internship, my PhD was also coming to an end. So I was deciding between either becoming a research scientist or starting a company, because I always wanted to start one. And now that I understood transformers pretty well, it's time to go and build a product using it. But the conviction was not there. Like transformers was still like sort of something where you would see research progress, but nothing like a product like GPT, like 3.5 or DALI. None of these things existed at the time. There was GPT-3. It was a toy. You could see it kind of work, but most of the times it wouldn't work. So that conviction was not there in anybody to like truly go and launch a product. And there was no example of any successful business being built with it either. So I decided I would just stick with research. I also had a lot of immigration issues, visa issues. So I just stuck with research. Now, I joined OpenAI after my PhD to work more on like to learn more about another class of models that was also very important in generative AI called diffusion models. So that was what I was spending time on as a researcher. But then I got to see, like companies like Jasper and Copy AI and GitHub Copilot all emerge as very successful products being built on top of GPT 3.5 and making a lot of revenue, like a lot more revenue than even OpenAI was making itself. And that moment made it very clear to me, okay, look, your entrepreneurship time has arrived. I was already like 27, 28 at the time, and like I was like, look, I don't have too many more years of high intensity work left in my body. Like I can work super hard even in my 30s. Like I can work really, really hard, but I don't have the 100-hour work weeks, week after week after week for like 5 years grind left. My mind won't work. Even if my body wants it, my mind will get burnt out. I'll zone out in meetings. I won't be able to digest complex concepts as fast anymore. I won't be able to code for many hours together anymore. So I realized that, and like felt like this was now or never for me. And also by mid 30s, you usually kind of build a family, stuff like that, right? Like there are so many other constraints outside of yourself. And so I took the plunge. Okay, the market is there, products are being built, technology is improving, costs are going to come down, the models are only going to get better. So now is the time. So I decided to leave, and I cold emailed a few investors like Elad Gil and Nat Friedman. Elad Gil is a legendary Silicon Valley investor. Basically, every unicorn in the internet and mobile era, you could look at it and he would be an investor in it. Airbnb, Stripe, Dropbox, Open Door, um, I don't know, Pinterest, Figma. He's an investor in all of these. And so, like, I emailed him on LinkedIn and he just responded in like an hour. And then he converted me into like a founder very fast. Like, he's very good at convincing people to leave. And Nat Friedman, too.
I'm just curious, what was the LinkedIn message?
I don't know. I can't remember like the specific wording, but it was more like, "Hey, Elon, I'm working at OpenAI. I work on all these, diffusion models and stuff, and I'm a researcher. But I want to actually start a company. That's what my heart is in, and I don't have any idea for any product or market. I have like literally zero clue. It's not my world. I come from an academic world, but um, I would love to use your advice on figuring it out. If you can spare half an hour, that'll be great." And he replied very instantly. So that actually, sometimes I'm very grateful. Like, why do people care about some new person you've never heard about? Of course, I had the track record and all that stuff, so that definitely helps. But still, someone has to take their time and do these things, and I deeply am grateful for him for that. And then Nat Friedman too. I Twitter DM'd him, and he just responded very fast. And the fact that Elon was already talking to him definitely helped. And so these two committed to invest in me without any idea. Like I just had a few demos, and they said, "Okay, look, we can put $1 million together, like one to 1.5 million, something of that nature." And friends, past friends, also were supportive, and they together we pooled together like 2 to 2.5 million and started the company. Now you can ask, like, is that a good amount of funding? It's very little funding, honestly. Think about it, like
Sure.
compared to other AI companies that don't have anything and just go and raise like tens of hundreds of millions directly.
When was this initial aim?
June, July, we started talking around June, July, and the funding came together in September
What year is that?
2022, before ChatGPT. Now, you can say if I knew ChatGPT was going to happen, like it would have been a dumb decision to leave OpenAI, right? You never knew, like that. That's just kind of how the world works. You make your own luck, and then you can ask, like, do I regret it? Would I rather been at OpenAI than to do my own company? I don't regret it at all. It's just, in fact, I feel more um, proud of myself that, like, despite such a massive success, Perplexity itself has its own name and like a different value proposition in the field, in the product space. And you truly want to build your muscle and prove to yourself you're capable of a bigger challenge by doing your own company. The amount of energy and like commitment and it takes to do this is just a lot more than writing a small component of a large system that gets the company, like another larger company, a lot of credit. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how it all came together. I knew my co-founder Dennis Yaratz from my PhD days in Berkeley. We wrote the same paper, but like independently, we discovered the same thing and wrote the same paper 1 or 2 days apart. And then he brought in another co-founder who I did not know before, but he knew. So it's Johnny Ho, who was like world number one at competitive programming. And they had worked together in this company called Quora, which was a question answering site. So that's kind of how it all came together for us. And till date, like, I think we all three have very complementary skills, which is pretty rare in a founding team. Usually you try to like start with people and then try to scope out roles. In our case, there was at least a pair of people who knew each other, but it's not like we three had worked together. In fact, Dennis and Johnny themselves hadn't talked to each other for a while because they were like not working together for a while. But they have like different skills. Like Dennis is very good at prototyping and testing new ideas quickly. Johnny is very good at actually building systems back end and uh, strategizing and like being very methodical about things. I am very good at big picture and vision and like uh, actually convincing people, recruiting, fundraising, and like positioning the product well, talking to users, like those kind of things. So it was like the perfect team in my opinion to do a company in the space. And all three of us are very fast iterators. Like we don't like stasis. We just kind of like one constant in iteration and improvement every week. So that helped you kind of feed off each other's energy in the beginning, and that really helped a lot. And yeah, we stuck through. Like, so we there were so many challenges, so many difficult moments, so many times when I felt like, why am I even doing this? But it's all worth it to make the planet smarter. Like,
Sure. And so you've raised over half a billion at this point. Uh, but let me ask you about the product. So this is Perplexity AI, and you described it as a question answer platform. Uh, what I don't understand about Perplexity. I understand a little bit about what you're doing in the background, but well, let me ask you first: who came up with the message that you're a Google competitor? You're taking on Google.
so I have never really wanted to do that, to be very honest.
It's a pretty bold statement. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I said at the beginning I want to talk to you about your PR. I mean, where did that messaging come from? Because uh, yeah, it gets a lot of attention, certainly.
I think I would be saying the truth here. So I guess the truth is that when we built this tool initially, we just built it as a tool that was useful to us because we kind of had no idea of how to build a company, how to build a product. Not neither three of us had done anything of this nature. And we initially built the tool like ChatGPT, where it'd be like a Slack bot, and then we would be able to ask it a bunch of questions, and it would just give you the answer by opening a new thread in response to the question you ask. And we realized that it would hallucinate a lot. It would just make up stuff, and it was not trustworthy. And my co-founder had this idea that, okay, like what if you ground it in real web links? We said, okay, we both are academics. What do academics do? What do journalists do when they write a paper or write a story? They only write stuff for which they actually have a reference. You're not allowed to say and make up stuff, right? That's the ethics in journalism and that's the ethics in academia. What if we bring that personality into a AI chatbot? Like a chat GPT that always looks up sources. That was the idea. And that ended up becoming a very useful bot of its own. that we made it a Discord bot with a new Discord server. And then we tested early feedback. And then the people who used it in the beginning, they were all like, hey, look, I know that you just built it as a cool tool, but I actually find this to be better than Google. The users said it. So when we released it, we were like, "Hey, look, guys, we made this cool new tool that's like a Chat GPT that's always accurate because it uses real links and facts, and you get citations." That's how we released it. But then people were like, "Hey, look, this is not really a Chat GPT competitor because Chat GPT is very useful of its own, even if it doesn't use real links. It's very useful because it's a brainstorming buddy." So I still want to be just using it for generating content where hallucinations was a feature, not a bug. Whereas your product, it's more like hallucinations is a bug. You want it to be as accurate as possible, and that's why you're using real links and you're always retrieving and then generating. So I feel like you're more of a Google competitor because you're trying to save time. You're trying to save people time from reading a bunch of web pages and like trying to distill the content in those web pages on your own. Instead, the AI does that work for you now. And then there's no need to type in keywords anymore. You just directly get to the point. So you're actually doing a paradigm shift to Google. So that's how we realized that after rolling out the product, we realized that we have something actually much bigger than what we thought. And then the further reasoning, this is something we never had any idea about in the beginning, which is, hey, it's not just a better product experience over Google, it actually disrupts Google's business model. Like you can have something better than Google on search and get killed right away, right? If Google just rolls out the same thing. Example, let's say you roll out a feature where, let's say Google hasn't shipped speech to speech experiences, and you roll out a feature that literally is Google plus voice to voice. You can get killed, that's fine. But if you fundamentally say, I don't need links anymore, I just, I'm just going to give you the answer directly, then that disrupts their display advertising business model because they basically tie their business model with their front end, with their UI, the 10 blue links, which link gets shown at the top, how many people view a link, how many people click on a link. This is the analytics that's fed to an advertiser. So and when I'm telling you, hey, that UI is going to go away and now you're going to see something else, an answer is the prominent part of the UI. Now that is a very advantageous position to be in because you are playing to their weakness, which is the deep tie with this UI on which you're making $1 trillion market cap. Like if you remember 2 weeks ago, they their advertising revenue increased, but it was $1 billion short of Wall Street expectations, which expected them to increase even more. And even though they made up for falling short of the expectations by making up revenue in subscription and cloud, the stock price went down by 6%. Now that is their problem. The that is their problem, and that's why we are able to operate. This innovator dilemma is playing out, and and then we decided, okay, look, we stumbled upon a magical idea. Everybody wanted to take on Google for the last 20 years. Nobody succeeded because there was no technology that enabled you to change the UI of search, and now finally it's getting changed. And what's more magical is that technology is in better shape outside Google than internally inside Google for the first time. Ever since the last 10 years, like for every single time in the last 10 years, the best AI models always lived inside Google. So even if there was a way to disrupt the Google experience, only Google could do it, and therefore they were safe. But because of OpenAI, because of Meta, because of all these open source AI models, suddenly like the rest of the world has leapfrogged Google and AI, and therefore a startup like us can actually boldly try to attempt to bring in this disruption. And so we got very lucky to be in the right place at the right time, right after ChatGPT, GPT 3.5, Llama 2, all these things were happening. And also at the same time, Google was going through bureaucracy and like political problems, slow progress. And so we were like so lucky to just take advantage of the timing.
You're searching a curated set of sources. That's how you ensure preciseness or correctness. Bing already does the same thing. They search. They use Bing search. They list the links just like you guys do, and it's you set it to be more precise, and it's pretty precise. So you guys hit a moment where you were able to raise money, but how do you survive in competing against Bing, in competing against Gemini, which is most certainly going to do the same thing? How do you deal with all that?
All right, yeah. Let me go one by one, right? So the first point about Bing, um, when there was a point when I was very scared about Bing, which was on the day I signed the term sheet for the Series A. Literally, we had a handshake with our Series A investor, and we were chilling in a cafe in Palo Alto because that week was so stressful. And we see The Verge leaking screenshots of Bing, the new version of Bing, and we are like, okay, that's it. The VC is going to go back on their word, and there's a 30-day due diligence period where the VCs check the market and like make a decision on whether to wire the money, and they're not going to do it. And I would not, I just have to go and like hope Microsoft or Google buy us off for like a little bit money so that I at least save my face here. But that was the extent of fear at that time. But Bing bought, they tried to do a free form chatbot and a search bot all in one single product. They did not explicitly focus on the search use case. They had advantage of having access to the most cutting edge model at the time, GPT-4, whereas everybody else in the world had only GPT 3.5. Despite that, despite all those advantages, all the distribution advantages, marketing, PR, they bottled it because of poor product execution and the fact that Bing has always been associated with a bad consumer product. The brand of Bing has always been associated with something that was like second tier. The third reason that they're not taking off is they gated users to install the Edge browser or have a Microsoft account to be able to use Bing Chat. So all these things stopped them from taking the first mover advantage and gave the opportunity for people like us to still exist. And outside of that, people view Perplexity as a much faster and better done consumer product than Bing. Our mobile apps are much more natively done on Swift UI, whereas Bing apps are built on Flutter. So the apps are much bigger in terms of memory consumption and size, slower, less well executed. Their focus is actually very different. Their focus is not really on delivering the best experience. Their focus is just getting browser market share. It's a very Microsoft way of going about things. Hey, I just want to get more Edge users than Chrome. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to offer people who are Edge users a lot of freebies like GPT-4 and then like DALI or like GPT-4 Vision or like um, PDF summaries on the side, all these kind of things. That way, I'm hoping that all my AI ownership of OpenAI translates to browser market share, which might translate to advertising revenue increase. So it's a very Microsoft way of thinking about it. Whereas, honestly, what is the real thing you should do? Deliver the best possible answer engine, the best end-to-end product experience to the user. Now, they don't have any incentive to do that because they're a $1 trillion company that's only trying to make a difference in terms of tens of billions of dollars in revenue. For us, no revenue, small startup, focus on product, nail it, get the user base incrementally, right? So that's why like we did much better than Bing, and we can, and to add fuel to my arguments, they even changed Bing Chat to call it Copilot. They realized it didn't work, and now they're trying to adopt the branding of some word Microsoft Copilot, which is typically associated with an enterprise SaaS product. Not doesn't work for a consumer. So it didn't really work for them. And our bet ended up being right. Now, as for Gemini, uh, I guess what I'll say is like Google is making the same mistakes they've been making for a while in messaging apps. They're constantly changing and rebranding things and having multiple competing products existing at the same time. There is Google Search Generative Experience (SGE) that is on Google.com itself and arbitrarily fires and doesn't fire based on whether you turn it off or not, and and doesn't fire for any commercial intent queries actually. And then there's Google Bard, which is now rebranding to Gemini, and there's Duet AI that's also trying to do something like that for enterprises. So there's all sorts of like different versions of the same product that are being rolled out. And when people think about Bard, the branding that Google has gone for is like your thought partner, your buddy, or something like that, more as a competition for ChatGPT, trying to do one single chatbot for all purposes, free form or search, doesn't matter, but they're trying to promote it more for free form chat, brainstorming. Whereas Perplexity is just purely focused on search. Like I'm not even trying to be a chatbot alternative. I'm trying to be the most accurate chatbot ever, like most accurate like answer bot. So when people think about Perplexity, they think about accuracy and fast, reliable answers. They think about so many things at once. So that is a key difference. And the other thing I would say is Google has no incentive. Like honestly, look, why would if you were Google, why would you build user base from zero for a new product? Like that's basically you not making use of all your distribution advantages, right? If you were Google, you would just directly roll out to the billions that you've already accumulated over 2 decades. But Bard built user base from zero. Of course, they had the benefit of Google marketing and PR, but it's like a very suboptimal move for a big tech company to do that. And why did they do that? Because they cannot do the other thing. They cannot do the other thing of changing Google.com to look like Bard. Okay, if Google.com looked exactly like Bard today, Perplexity is dead. We're done. But Google is also dead. We are building our own search. I mean, we've been building our own search ever since the beginning. We rely on some ranking signals that we can scrape from Google search result pages, but we're not like overly dependent on them in any way that our service wouldn't be able to run without them or something.
When you fire a query, the backend doesn't send it to Google.
So Google has no API. You can scrape search result pages of Google. There's no official API for Google. Now, and if you only scrape search result pages of Google, your latency will be very bad. It'll be very slow. And you'll have the same problems that Google has in terms of SEO, spam, and ads and things like that. So the fact that we don't suffer from these problems clearly indicates that we are doing a lot more than just hitting Google API, which of course doesn't exist. But even if you consider hitting Google API, meaning just getting whatever the search result pages offer, then clearly we're doing a lot more than that, right? And we have been building our own infrastructure for picking results from our own pages. And if you just hit Google API, you're bottlenecked by what the snippets are given to you from the search result page, which are going to be low quality and less informative and will lead to a lot of hallucinations. So you have to build your own index. You have to go and crawl the web yourself, and you have to build your own ranking, and you have to build your own page rank of the web for which domains to use and not use. And we've been doing this ever since the beginning. Now this is a multi-year journey. I'm not telling you we're done. I'm not giving you any indication that we have something that rivals Google. All I'm telling you is that this is going to take while, and the only way to win here is to have a product that's already being used by people on a day to day basis and use all that data flywheel to build an amazing uh, ranking and index, which will end up being like technological moats for you.
And so on this crawling the web and indexing sites for use by Perplexity, uh, how is that? I mean, that's got to be automated, right? Uh, how what metrics are you using to rank as authority or accuracy? Because that's what it comes down to, is having a curated list of sites.
I would say that initially we started off doing a lot of manual work for this. Like I literally wrote down like some domains that we just had to like not use and stuff like that. But obviously that process is not scalable. Um, and we have a more sophisticated process that uses our own aggregate data in terms of like, what domains get linked at the top as citations. This, you can think about what domains get cited as a different signal for page rank of the web, and then the frequency of citations can decide like how often you should prioritize using a domain's results versus another domain. And then honestly, that alone is not enough. You have to use a ton of other signals in terms of prioritizing the ranking, including the your confidence of like how good the snippet from the domain will be based on your own crawling infrastructure. So we are constantly upgrading and updating these systems as we speak. We have a very 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 talented search and ranking team that's working all the time here. And I believe like whatever solution we'll implement will constantly need to get upgraded because the web keeps changing every day, and there are like different ways to um, like fall into the trap of poor quality results. That's why this company is hard. Like sometimes I think like why should this even be a company versus just being a project? The difference between a project and a company is a project gets done, there is a deliverable, and it's over.
This process of indexing complexity, when I use it, every now and then I'll ask it something and it doesn't have an answer, presumably because the pages index don't include that. And then I switch, frankly, to Bing Copilot.
When you switch to Bing Copilot, do you get the answer?
Usually, yeah. There are other times when it's the reverse, when I have to ask Bing twice to get the answer. It won't find it the first time. But how I mean, I don't know how you measure it, but how how much have you indexed, and if, based on how much you want to index? Are you 10% there? Are you 2% there, 50% there?
I would say we are 70 to 80% there in terms of like really important pages on the web. We're able to like prioritize the citations. Like basically, they're okay. Here, maybe I should add nuance here. I don't want to say we have 70% of the whole web's index captured. Um, what I want to say is like there is a good part of the web, a small portion of the web is actually useful. Now, in that portion, we have captured 70 to 80% of the value already. There is a long tail even there. Now, the web is incredibly long tail. Like you only want the head of the distribution, and even within the head of the distribution, there is a long tail. So that's what we're going to try to capture. And if we have captured the basic head of the whole web, I feel like it's game set match for us in the next generation of the way people consuming information because nobody wants the whole web anymore.
And then another question, my career was with the New York Times, and there's this lawsuit with OpenAI. Uh, how do you feel about that? Because if you're indexing and pulling data from sites, I think fair use will win out. But how do you feel about that? Because the New York Times argues that 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 you're stealing the not you. I mean that OpenAI is stealing the revenue from New York Times because the users see the text response, they don't see the links, or if they do see the links, they don't see the advertising on the links.
Yeah. I would say that OpenAI steals other people's revenue a lot more. Is an argument that you can empathize with, because they don't actually display the sources, and they've trained all these models on all the data. And the leaving aside the training, even the end product, the ChatGPT end product, doesn't display the sources, right? Um, so then if it literally reproduces the content that was there in the original publisher's site without actually attributing it to them, I do feel like that's something should be taken seriously. Um, so the New York Times has some valid arguments there. Um, Now, in our case, we attribute the sources directly. So we're not actually like saying this content is from Perplexity. It's actually just the users, the publisher's content, that we are just making sure it reaches more users when they're asking something else. So the content publisher should feel good about it, and like we can still drive traffic to them, and Perplexity does drive traffic to others. And
Have you signed licensing agreements with any of the sites that you index?
we don't have licensing agreements. So we haven't formalized any partnerships with anybody. But we do pay some data providers for API access, and I anticipate doing a lot more of that nature.
Did the idea of building a vector database ever occur to you guys as not obviously as the main source, but as an auxiliary knowledge base?
A vector database can be constructed as proprietary vector embeddings that you have, and then the algorithms for fast retrieval, fast key value retrieval. Now, the second part doesn't need anything proprietary from your end. If people outside are doing it really well, and we use this thing called Quadrant, which is really fast and very good. But the embeddings that are used for Quadrant are trained by ourselves. And so, in some sense, you can say we have built a vector database, the end-to-end vector database, but we rely on the infrastructure that's being done by other people. And Twitter X is also using Quadrant, I believe.
Yeah, and the things that the embeddings in the for you in Quadrant are the URLs of trusted sites, or they're the content.
Yeah, so the traditional key value database is URLs, and you don't need vector database for that. Now, the actual content itself is chunked into pieces, and that requires your vector database, vector embeddings.
Yeah, oh, that's fascinating. And so you're aware of the looming threats, but you think you have an opportunity to scoot through. You've got plenty of funding. I was interested that the Bezos invested because Amazon's invested in Anthropic. And again, it seems as though Anthropic, together with Amazon, could steamroll you guys. But how do you feel about that? Anthropic is still kind of trying to find its market fit.
So I would disagree with your conclusion that Anthropic can steamroll us with Amazon, because they don't have any expertise in search technology. They're only working on chatbot and then Claude, the model that's powering the chatbot. And even leaving aside search, their work so far in building a first party consumer product has been like not that great compared to even players like us. So I'm not really worried about Anthropic. And also, Jeff's investment in us has nothing to do with Amazon's investment in Anthropic.
And so, what's next? You continue indexing.
Yeah, it's very simple actually. A lot of people ask me this question: what is next? You know, what's one of the two key things that will change your destiny? And I give them the very boring answer: is we just need to keep growing, and the best way to grow is to make the product better. And what does it mean to make the product better? Is to make it faster, more accurate, and make the answers more readable. So faster, more accurate, and more readable, more presentable. And if we just deliver on this, then our growth and retention will automatically improve. and that'll lead to continue to lead to like strong word of mouth growth as well as like marketing opportunities, and that'll further drive home more awareness, and then that'll make all the underlying models and indexes better, bigger, and more useful. And this will continue to like feed each other, the work we do on making the product better and the work we do on making the index better, so they'll feed each other. And then if we can create that ever self-fulfilling cycle, flywheel, um, and keep hiring well, like I feel like we have a real shot at success. So that's my job to ensure the machine keeps running.
Yeah, I would, the is do you have much of an API business? Is that a revenue stream?
Yeah, we have our own proprietary PPLX API that has a first of its kind online LLMs without any knowledge cut off. So it always retrieves from our index and writes the answer. And I believe that API will see a lot of adoption as we increase the rate limits. Currently, the rate limits are very strict because um, I would say like reduce the rate limits, like basically um, make it possible for more people to submit more requests per second or minute. Because right now it's severely rate limited because of our own infrastructure. We don't have that many GPUs. So we now that we have more funding, we can actually expand access. And then once we do that, I believe like our API business will also flourish. And I think that's very important so that it doesn't put us in a pressure to figure out like advertising revenue soon. Imagine if Google had Google Cloud figured out before Amazon figured out AWS. They wouldn't have needed to go this deep into advertising. So, considering the hindsight of how the world has played out, I think we have the luxury of like trying many different business models at once.
Yeah. The uh, what kind of companies are using the API at this point?
I do not have enterprise contracts signed with big companies yet. I would say we have like around 10,000 developers that are building with our APIs spread across so many different companies. And I think we'll have to mature more as a company to like do large enterprise contracts with like established companies.
Yeah. Uh, at the beginning you were saying, and I've read that you're building on GPT 3.5. Now you have GPT 4 in your paid version, I guess. Uh, but and then you have Llama 2, or you fine tune the model off of Llama. What is Llama? What role does the Llama 2 model play?
Yeah, so we build on top of two open source models, Llama 2 and then Mistral. Mistral and Mixtral is a new company called Mistral that's published a bunch of cool models. And the role that these models play is give startups like us a chance to build on a stack that has no big companies' influence. So, for example, OpenAI, we are competing with them on consumer product like ChatGPT and Perplexity are both trying to compete for the same user subscription revenue. So having alternatives to model access outside OpenAI is very important to us. So that's the role being played by Anthropic's Claude, or this is a closed source model, or open source models like Llama and Mistral. The additional advantage of open source, obviously, is the fact that you have access to the weights, and so you have the flexibility to change these models even more to suit your product and further differentiate your product so that it doesn't exactly respond in the same style and idiosyncrasies of GPT 3.5 and 4, doesn't moralize people, has is a lot less restricted, and therefore um, can like attract a different user base or the same user base even that might want like different kind of behavior. So it's very good. It's very good for the world that like Meta and Mistral are like focused on open sourcing models.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And so these open source models, Llama and Mistral, are playing the same role as GPT 3.5. It's just, do you split a query when it comes in and send some of it to the open source and some of it to GPT 3.5, and then, you know, put them back together when you get the response, or do you, depending on rate levels or traffic, do you?
Yeah, yeah. Our router infrastructure is very sophisticated today that I don't even know what we are currently doing. It's something that keeps intelligently changing based on the throughput and the latency and like uh, whether some existing API endpoint is down or up. And we do like a lot of intelligent routing. But our goal, our like maybe I'll give you a more broader goal is to be able to run like if in a very near future term, like we should be able to achieve this goal that our model is the best model for our product. And the singular reason for that is because we have so much user data that we should be able to specialize our model for our product, and it should be a lot better than making use of OpenAI's models for that purpose, or Anthropic's model. And um, we should also be able to achieve like true independence. That way, like, oh, it's not just for saying you're independent, but it's actually in your interest to be, because you cannot build this product in the most useful way to your user without actually tuning it to them, and therefore you're achieved something truly remarkable. And that requires you to not just be able to train models well, you should be also be able to serve them. Inference infrastructure should be very robust and scalable, which we've achieved already. And now we'll soon achieve the training milestones too. And then, like with the advent of better open source models like Llama 3 and future versions of Mistral, we should be able to achieve the parity with not just GPT 3.5, but also with 4. And that'll be remarkable because then, in that world, then you would say OpenAI or Anthropic should have even better models than GPT 4. And then what kind of search experiences can you create with those models that you've not seen before? So I always feel like that'll end up being how the world works. Is like whatever is possible today will be possible with our own models very fast, but then there'll be a more intelligent model out there in the market, and then we will also innovate on the product part and see what kind of search experiences that were never possible before that can suddenly be possible.
That's it for this episode. I want to thank Arvin for his time. If you want to read a transcript of today's conversation, you can find one on our website, Ion AI. That's EYE-ON.AI. And in the meantime, remember, the singularity may not be near, but AI is changing our world. So pay attention.